Shalom. I think I better put my earphones with the microphones in. Forgot them because people have complained that the sound is not so good. Okay, I'm going to start over. Okay, I did this mind candy about a week ago, maybe more than a week ago, but I somehow had the camera lens blocked. So most of that mind candy came out with a black screen. So I'm repeating the same mind candy now with my picture, and it's visible. And I want to start over. Food, meals in general, are a very, very important thing in the life of all of us human beings. We like to eat, and we like to eat with guests and with company and with friends and with visitors. It's one of those old human phenomena that eating is necessary, social, and physical, and I would say spiritual event. It's been so from the dawn of human history and even in prehistory. And it is interesting to see that mammals, like the cat family, lions, tigers, cheetahs, leopards, like when they have a kill, a lot of their children, their cousins, their uncles, the pack comes to share that kill. Gorillas, monkeys, and mammals in general share their food with their family, with their tribe, and with their people. This is not a secret, it's not unique, it's something that is absolutely human in human behavior. But in the Bible, meals take a very special place. And they have more than the regular, more than the dietary value of the food. There is additional social value, and I would say, especially in a Jewish home, also spiritual. Especially Friday night when we gather together as a family and we share food, prayers, bread, wine, we bless everything. And this is a very, very ancient Jewish custom. I would say as ancient, at least as ancient as Ezra and Nehemiah when the Jews returned from Babylonian exile back to the land of Israel. Of course, one of the most significant meals in the Bible is of great interest is the meal that three unknown guests, call them angels if you wish, come to Abraham's encampment, the Abraham's tent, uninvited, just appear. Abraham shows them the natural, normal hospitality that any Middle Eastern sheikh, governor, king would show his honored guest, even if they are strangers, and depends how they approach the situation and how they relate to the host of the house, of the encampment, of the tent. Of course, one of the most important events for the disciples of Yeshua, for Jews and non-Jews who believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, the divine Son of the living God, we have what we call the communion, which is universal. The Catholics, the Greek Orthodox, the Ethiopian Church, the Egyptian Church, the Protestant churches, almost everybody has some kind of memorial meal we call communion. And the word communion is only found once in the New Testament, and it is related to that meal. Very simple meal, bread and wine. Unless you're Baptist or some Pentecostal groups, bread and Welch's grape juice. Fine, it doesn't make a difference, it's kosher. But I want to deal with this concept of the meal in a Roman or Greco-Roman context in the first century. But let me really start with Abraham and the three angels that come there. What do you have? You have Abraham. Sarah is in the tent. Look, they're very big encampment. We are talking about chapter 18 of Genesis, and we are chapter 14 of Genesis. We find out that Abraham had 318 men, soldiers, between the ages of soldiers, between the age of 20 and 50. By the time that a man was 20 at that era in the Middle East, he probably was already married and he probably had already one or two babies. So we're talking about, encampment, roughly 1,000 people at least, including children and women and the 318 men who are soldiers, and Abraham and the servants and the shepherds, and it was a big encampment. So these three men come. Abraham receives them in a royal reception. He asks them to sit down. He goes and brings water and he washes their feet because they had been walking and they didn't have Adidas or Nike tennis shoes. They walked around with simple sandals, probably even without socks. And he welcomes them in, runs to the tent where Sarah is. She's the matron of the tribe, of the community, of the encampment. She's already an old lady, and so is Abraham. And he says, prepare a calf for these guests. Now, people didn't eat meat every day. Meat was a meal for celebration. It was a meal that was special, mainly eaten in holidays and special occasions. So he tells Sarah, prepare an animal, which I have to share this story with you. We have a dear brother in the Galilee, in the village of Sepphoris, and which was the capital of the Galilee in the time of Yeshua, of Jesus. And he's a shepherd, has sheep and mainly goats, and he makes cheese and so forth. And he gave us Netivyah, the tithe of his flock, every year for Passover, around 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 animals, goats or sheep, mainly sheep for Passover. So usually he had a Yemenite butcher that was in a village next to his village that butchered the sheep, cleaned it, kept the skin, and kept parts of especially the internal parts, which Yemenites love, and the bottom of the legs, and he mainly gave us meat ready to be cooked. One year I decided I'm going to be wise. I decided, okay, I want to keep the skin, and I want to keep the head, and I want to keep the brain and the tongue and the liver and the kidneys, and send me the sheep slaughtered but whole. Well, he sent 3 sheep, slaughtered and but whole, and I said, I'm going to butcher them myself. Well, I started in the like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By 1 o'clock in the morning, I hadn't even cleaned 1 sheep, and I was dead tired, and I was throwing up from the smell and the whole thing. Oh, it was horrible. And finally called my son, who was, I think, 13 or 14 years old, and I went to bed, and my son finished the butchering on his own by morning, and we had the meat ready for cooking for Passover. So, wow, not easy. Not easy. I threw up so many times from the sight of the blood and the internal parts and the smell. Ah, no good. So they fix the food, and then they have conversation. Now, this is the key point that I want you to realize. Meals were a social time, not only for food, but the politics and meaningful conversations, the agendas were during mealtime. We have this in Abraham's story. We have this in the story of Jesus at the house of the Pharisee at Bethany. We have this in several other occasions of meals in the Bible. David and Absalom and Amnon, and all these things happen around the meal time, during the meal time. I learned from my dad, and not only from my dad, but from my dad's bosses, that the most important time to achieve contracts, agreements, build relationship is the meal time. People, when they eat, their blood leaves their head and comes to their stomach. It's a good time to influence their head when their blood is in their stomach, and when they're happy with good food, with the meal. That is a strategy. It's a strategy. So, from the biblical time, we have lots of examples, but I want to get to the point of this mind candy, to the Greco-Roman period. If you visit Greco-Roman archaeology, whether it's in Italy, in Greece, or Cyprus, or Israel, and the Middle East in general, or even North Africa, you see that the main room of somebody rich, a rich house, a powerful person, was what we would call the dining room. It was the most decorated room. We have in the city of Sepphoris, where Mary probably went shopping with Jesus the child, Yeshua the child, to Sepphoris. We have witnesses of this in rabbinical literature, that she was seen with the baby in Sepphoris by famous rabbis, and they had discussions, whatever. But Sepphoris was only 5 kilometers from Nazareth. Nazareth was a very small town. Sepphoris was the capital of the Galilee. Had a market, had a theater, had very rich houses. And in one of these rich houses, there is what's called the Mona Lisa of the Galilee. A beautiful, very, very fine early Roman period mosaic with the story of Bacchus, the Greek myth of the wine god, because that part of the Galilee was a wine country, of the wine god. And what you see there is a medallion with the beautiful woman. That's what it's called, the Mona Lisa. It was the dining room. This house was so rich that it had a private bathroom, which was very, very, very rare during that time. And had a sign that this is the bathroom. Sign said hygge, from the word hygiena, hygiene in modern English. Hygge was the bathroom, the place of hygiene. So in that beautiful living room, the biggest room in the house, central room in the house, you see that there is a C, but square, one end of the house. It's called triclinium, three-sided white area that they didn't do mosaic on. Why didn't they do mosaic? Because that's where the table was. The table was made out like a square C letter. It was a low table, low seats or cushions on which they reclined. That's why in Passover we say, what's different tonight from every other night? Every other night we sit, and in Passover we recline. We see that also in the time that Yeshua ate the last Passover with his disciples on Mount Zion. John leaned his head on Yeshua's shoulder because they were reclining. If they were sitting in a straight seat, it wouldn't happen. We have also in the book of Proverbs lots of proverbs connected to this kind of festive special meal. And the book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 17 says, it is better to dine grass with love, good atmosphere, than eat the fatted calf with bitterness and hatred. And that's true. And during these meals, in the Roman period, in the time of Yeshua and the apostles, that was the event, the central event. Yeshua is invited by a Pharisee in Luke 11, verse 38. It says, when the Pharisees saw it, he marveled that he had not first washed before, English translation is dinner. The Greek word is ariston. In Rome and in Greece, ariston was the main meal, which was dinner. But in the land of Israel, the main meal was not dinner, it was breakfast. And ariston here is breakfast. And when he says, this Pharisee says to Yeshua, why didn't you wash first before you came to eat? It's a very special text because the word there for washing is not washing. It's why were you not baptized, baptizomen, before you came? Why? Because the Pharisees, until this very day in the Hasidic Orthodox Jewish communities, some of the communities, they go to the mikveh, to the baptistry, to the pool, early in the morning at dawn, after they wake up, the first thing after they wake up. They go there, they immerse themselves, they purify themselves, and then they come home and then they eat breakfast. Ariston, the Greek word. So Yeshua is invited for meals. We have it in Luke chapter 7, Luke chapter 11. We have it in John 21. Yeah. Yeshua fixes breakfast for the apostles before he sends them, assures them of his resurrection. And he arrived to the Galilee before they arrived, and they got there at night to fish. And then in the morning, he's already cooked his breakfast, fish for breakfast. Like a good Jew and like a good European. And then he talks to them during that meal, very important conversation. In Matthew 22, we have the wedding feast, which is all around a meal and drinking wine. And we have this text in Matthew 22, verse 4. And again, he sent out other servants, saying, tell those who are invited, see that I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding feast. So much of the New Testament text deals with these meals and the events, the messages that come are related to these meals. And of course, the communion in First Corinthians, we have it clearly, the discussion, the description of what the early church did and what they thought and what they confessed during that meal. Now, let me bring this idea home. Today, businessmen want to have some big meeting and close a deal, make a sale, finish a process, business process. What do? They go have a nice, wonderful, delicious meal in a special place, in a special restaurant, whether it's New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, London, Paris, Tokyo, Seoul, Korea, Singapore, anywhere. I've been in many of these, and meals are a tool for discussion, for making peace, for reconciliation, for preaching, sharing the gospel in these meals. So, yes, the time of Yeshua, the Greco-Roman period in the 1st century AD, and till this very day today, the meals are a vehicle for social interchange in a warm, friendly atmosphere of hospitality and good food. It's a tactic. It's a tactic. I could give you examples from Israel's political scenes in the 1950s and in later on, that a lot of the big deals, including deals with the Pope of that time, Israeli politicians did their homework. They found out what the Pope likes to eat, what they would like to cook. And these things are something that we all need to learn from. It's mind candy. Be hospitable. It's mind candy. Prepare good food for your guests. It's mind candy. Talk about the most important things in your life, in your faith, in your business during mealtime. It's mind candy. God bless all of you and give you Amen.